I have a very special guest with me today. I'm sure many of the viewers in the audience will have already heard of her. She's a theoretical nuclear and quantum physicist, the alternative Nobel Prize winner of 1993, author of numerous books, environmental and ecological activist, a powerful eco-feminist. Her name, as many of you may have guessed, is Vandana Shiva.
Hello, Alessandro.
Hello. The first question is a bit personal. Can you tell us how you became so interested in nature and the role of the chipko movement in this?
Well, I was born into nature. I was born in the Himalayan forests. I grew up with the forest. And before I was leaving for Canada to do my PhD, I just wanted to visit one of my favorite forests to carry my home with me. And this forest was gone, and the stream that came from it was a trickle. And I felt like part of me had been chopped up because I'd grown up with these forests. And I was talking to the little tea shop while waiting for a bus. And I was talking about how tragic it was that the forests were disappearing. And he said, but now there's hope, there's chipko. And he talked about how women were coming out to protect the mountains, you know. Chipko means to hug. And they were basically saying, we're going to embrace the trees, you'll have to kill us before you kill the trees. And that's how 10 years of actions, we stopped the logging in the high Himalaya for commercial forestry. But I took a pledge then that I will go now to Canada, but I will come back every vacation, every summer, every winter, and volunteer for this movement. So that's what I did for 10 years. And I call it the Chipko University of Ecology, because that's where I learned a lot of what I know.
And what is the most important lesson you've learned in your life?
The first is not to be arrogant. Not to be arrogant about being human, not to be arrogant about being a scientist trained in high-level institutions, but to know all life is sentient, to know every person, even in a remote Himalayan village, has knowledge about how to live, to respect that knowledge. And with that respect, to be able to learn from everyone. You know, we are brought up to think, I do a master's, that's the end of my studies. I do a PhD, that's the end of my studies. And I've learned that every day is a new learning. And every day is a renewal of your knowledge.
Thank you. And a bit similar to that, what is your most important challenge today?
I think the most important challenge for me as well as the whole world is the concentration of destructive power. Concentration and centralization by itself is a disease because life is decentered. Life is diversity. But when it's organized around destructive power, that's what's bringing us to the brink. That's what's bringing us to the collapse. And whether it's the food system or the energy system or the communication system, just look at any field. This concentration of power that takes away power from people and is destroying the earth. That's our biggest challenge, and that's why we have to be constantly creative. How do we respond?
And are there any Buddhist teachings or teachings that have an important meaning for you?
I think the most important Buddhist teaching is that all life is sentient. I remember when His Holiness the Dalai Lama 60th birthday was being celebrated. You know, he's already celebrated his 82nd, 83rd birthday. So I'm talking about 22 years ago. And I was asked to give a speech at his conference. And I've been very, very engaged in not accepting patenting of life. Because a patent on life means human beings have created life, which is arrogant. So I've been fighting against patenting of life. And because GMOs are created in order to take patents on life, I've been saying, no, you do a good GMO, fine, it'll spread because it's doing good. But if the only purpose is to monopolize life, we're sorry, life is for every being. So when I gave my talk on patents and GMOs, His Holiness scribbled a note to me, and I still hold it very precious. It says, all beings have a right to happiness. No being has a right to take their happiness away. So this tenet of Buddhism, that all beings are sentient, They all have a right to happiness. And with it comes the fact that we don't have a right to take it away. That is the most important Buddhist teaching.
And would you describe yourself as a devout Hindu, and what effect does Hinduism have on your actions and your beliefs?
Well, you know, the word Hindu is derived from the word Indus. And it was the word used for all people who lived beyond the Indus. Because all invaders came from the west. And the Indus is the first river they come across. So the land beyond the Indus was called Hindustan. The people of that land were called Hindus. Now we are already talking about Christianity already being there, about Christianity in India is older than Christianity in Europe. Islam in India is older than Islam in the Middle East. So the word Hindu for me is a geographical indicator, the land to which we belong. We have so many traditions, so many traditions. And most importantly, we have an ancient Vedic tradition, which is for all. I know amazing Muslim teachers who teach the Vedas. His Holiness the Dalai Lama always says, Buddhism is the distillation of the ancient Indian teaching. I give you back the Nalanda teaching. Please protect it. So what have I learned from these traditions? That the earth is sacred. The earth is our mother. We are her children. Don't walk harshly. Tread lightly on her, and she will give you abundance.
Thank you. How do you see the youngest generation of ecological activists?
That's where I put my hope. That's where I put my energies. We have a whole movement called the Young Ecologists. We work with schools and young people. They come to our Earth University. Right now, while I'm here in Italy, there's a group of about 65 students at the Navdanya Biodiversity Farm Earth University, learning how to be part of the earth, learning how to serve the earth and protect the earth through protecting seeds, doing organic farming, protecting biodiversity, eating good food. So the future belongs to future generations. And you know, every generation has to hand over a better world. That's what I see as my duty.
Do you foresee a future with safe nuclear power?
Well, you know, I was training in India's atomic energy establishment with a dream to be a nuclear physicist. And I was in the first experimental fast breeder reactor when it went critical. And I came home and was showing off because, you know, it's something to be in a fast breeder reactor. And we're sitting at a dinner table and I'm talking about all this achievement. And my sister, who's a medical doctor, just asked me, and what about the radiations? And it's not something we study. We don't look at it. We are not taught. We are taught how to create trigger reactions and chain reactions. But we are not taught about what harm nuclear radiations can do. So I then decided I would look more at theoretical physics, and that's why I went into the foundations of quantum theory. But when you asked me, what about safe nuclear energy? Right now, my thinking about nuclear energy is in terms of the larger energy system. Or at the end of it, what are you doing? You're blasting an atom in order to create heat, in order to create boil water, to create electricity. There's simpler ways to boil water.
What would you say to your younger self?
To my younger self, I would say that, you know, the future is unpredictable. Be ready for whatever. And I was never the kind who had narrow ambitions. My passion was solving equations and understanding the world. My passion is still trying to understand how nature works, but much more in its living systems. And I would say to my younger self, don't look down on the study of living systems, because we used to look down at biology because physics was up there. And I think in my late life, I'm learning so much biology. I never attended a single biology class. And I think learning about life is the most important thing.
We mentioned also in the intro that you are an eco-feminist. Do you think that ecology and feminism are inherently linked, or do you think that they are separate struggles which can be combined into the greater struggle of people?
Well, ecology is about the science of life. And movements that defend life are ecological movements. Women's liberation is about recognizing that women's contributions to the economy of life are the most significant part of the economy. If women weren't not holding the economy together with their invisible work, we'd have no economy. So the invisibility of nature's contribution and the invisibility of women's contribution have common roots, and that root is the mind that comes from capitalist patriarchy, domination and extraction and greed. So ontologically, worldview-wise, the roots are common. In terms of movements, they've grown as separate movements, but I do not think we will be able to have a deep ecology movement without the recognition that the oppression of some parts of humanity are connected to the violence against nature. And we will not be able to have a true feminism unless we recognize there are other ways to be human than being violent.
Like you said just now, you mentioned that nature is the base of economy, just as women are the base of economy. Can you explain what you mean by this?
Well, when I started to do my early writings, I wrote a book called The Ecology and the Politics of Survival. And I've done a graphic. The foundation of all economy is derived from oikos, our home. It's the management of the home. And the biggest part of production takes place in nature's economy. How is water renewed? Through the hydrological cycle. The second biggest part is through what I call the sustenance economy, the invisible work of women, the invisible work of small peasants, the invisible work of farmers and workers whose work is uncounted because their contribution is extracted as surplus value. So that's the sustenance economy, that which sustains society and nature. And the third is the market. Now the market itself could be local, it could be national, it's now becoming increasingly global. And at this point, the market is no more about real things, the coffee I'm drinking, the water that we can be putting in our glass. It's now the financial economy, the movement of finances in Wall Street. And this is 70 to 100 times bigger than the real things in the world. So it's very hungry money waiting to find a place to make money. And they are looking at $4,000 trillion of money making on Wall Street by putting nature into a financial asset. The river will be one little river that might be dying because no one's taking care of it. But if you put that much water on Wall Street, it can multiply 100 times as a financial asset. So they're looking at 4,000 trillion. So what do I mean when I talk of nature's economy? I talk about the real creativity of nature's cycles of renewal, of nutrition, of water, of the climate. I see the climate crisis as a disruption of the Earth's capacity to manage a climate. After all, this Earth regulated her climate. She brought the temperature down from 290 degrees to 13 degrees centigrade. Brought down the carbon dioxide from 98% to 0.03%. Now that's amazing creative power. And we need to follow that creative power to say, how can we live in ways that we cool the planet while we grow our food for our needs, while we have the oxygen to breathe? Nature's economy lays it all out for us. We follow the laws of nature's economy. We create human economies that are sustainable and just. And then from there, we create local markets that meet the needs of everyone. No one goes hungry, no one is without a home, no one is without work. We just have to start becoming alive to the fact that nature is alive. Because Mr. Bacon, the Chancellor of England, in the 1600s, whenever he was, he declared nature as dead. That we must subjugate nature in order to have mastery over the universe and create an empire. But that seeking an empire has created the destruction of the planet. So in order to address the ecological crisis, we must look at the worldviews that have led us to this place and now start thinking in ways that we start to recognize that we are part of nature, we are not her masters, and nature's alive, she has her economy. Oikonomia was Aristotle's word, the art of living. And to learn the art of living, we must turn to nature.
You spoke also about GMOs and how it is the profit behind them which is the issue, and the idea of putting a patent on life. Do you believe that if the government, or a more controlled by the people version of the government, were to create GMOs for benefit, that would be better than any system of capitalism that we have currently?
Well, you know, my entry into the GMO question came with a meeting in 1987 where the chemical industry said it very clearly that we have to use the new techniques of gene splicing, of recombinant DNA, to move genes around, because then we can claim we've made something new, take a patent on it. This will be our future profits. But to do this, we must prohibit farmers from having their own seeds. So we must write intellectual property laws. And they drove the WTO intellectual property laws. That's the day I decided I was going to save seeds. I would watch and see where GMOs are going, but I would also monitor the trade laws, the World Trade Organization laws. And that's what I've done. But I would also work with my government to write laws that protect the integrity of life, which is the Buddhist recognition that all life is sentient. If all life is sentient, you can't pretend that you have created your relatives. They are there. You have to relate to them in a non-violent way, in a way of ahimsa. So definitely patents on life are illegitimate on any ground, on ethical ground, on scientific ground, because you don't invent a seed. You take a seed that makes itself, and you can shoot a gene, but shooting the gene is not making the seed, which has the power of renewal in its power of being a seed. A lab experiment can shoot a gene, but renewal of life is life's processes. And in India, we've rejected many patents, always saying that, but you don't make the seed. And India's laws, Article 3J says plants, animals, and seeds are not human inventions. Therefore, they will not be patented. And I feel very grateful that I had a role to work with my parliament to shape these laws. When you ask, would genetic engineering in public hands be better? The first question to ask is, for what do you need genetic engineering? So the first two applications were pest control and weed control. Are there no other ways to do it? No, there are. We control pests by having biodiversity. We control weeds by having biodiversity. That's what we do in Navdanya, the movement. Have genetic engineering experiments and use led to control of weeds and pests? No. The Bt toxin crops have led to super pests like the pink bollworm and super weeds that are so resistant to the Roundup that they can't be controlled. So even if this was in public hands, you would still have two problems. The problem of the technology not being able to deal with the complexity of nature. But the second, dealing with toxics. Roundup is Roundup, whether it's in public hands or in Monsanto's hands. So we have to look at the system as a whole, ask what better ways are there, what non-violent ways exist, and if the genetic engineering path is the only one and the better one, then through democracy and through regulatory process of biosafety, the kinds of laws we've put in place, yeah.
And finally, if you could say one thing to every single person in the world right now, that could be a phrase, sentence, even a word, what would it be?
To everyone in the world right now, whether it is to deal with climate change or extinction or hunger or disease and the health crisis or alienation. The WHO has just recognized alienation as a very big mental health problem. I would say plant a garden. It's a solution to everything.
Thank you.